Welcome to the Olive Grove Podcast. Ready for another deep dive with us?
Always.
Today we're taking a look at Isaiah chapter 52.
Yeah, it's pretty packed with imagery and symbolism, right?
For sure. And especially around those themes of Zion, the coming Messiah, repentance, and uncleanliness.
Oh, yeah, you had those marked in your notes. Those are woven together right from the start. Remember those opening verses? Zion is called to, awake and clothe herself with strength. It's not just talking about, a physical city, is it?
No, it feels so much bigger.
Right, it's speaking to something deeper, within all of us.
Exactly.
It's like Zion here, it represents God's people, the spiritual kingdom, yeah.
Oh, I see.
So when Isaiah talks about awakening, he's talking about spiritual renewal, like shedding the old, embracing the new. And you can see that contrast throughout the whole chapter, the uncircumcised and unclean versus, the splendid garments of Jerusalem. It's a powerful image, right? Moving from spiritual impurity to holiness.
Yeah, it is. And that redemption, it's like a gift.
Exactly. It is not something you can earn.
Right. I even underlined verse 3 where it says, "You were sold for nothing, and you will be redeemed without money." Such a powerful reminder, especially when you're struggling.
Yeah.
And you feel like you have to earn God's favor.
Oh, absolutely. It points to that idea of God's grace, his love, salvation. Those are freely given, not, something we can buy or achieve through our own efforts. And it foreshadows that concept of redemption through a Messiah.
Right.
Which we'll see more of as we go through the chapter.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah. But first, let's maybe talk about those verses you had marked with a question mark.
Oh, yeah.
Verses 4 through 6. They seem to shift gears a bit, focusing on that historical context of Israel's exile. What were your thoughts on that section?
I was a little confused, honestly. Why bring it past suffering when we're talking about redemption? It felt kind of out of place.
Yeah, I get that. But it's all about context. Remember, the Israelites had experienced exile in Egypt and Assyria, right?
Yeah.
So by reminding them of those hardships, Isaiah is really emphasizing the magnitude of their coming deliverance. It's like saying, look how far you've come and how much greater your future will be.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about returning to their former state.
Right.
It's about reaching something even more glorious.
Exactly. And there's another layer here too. Verse 5 mentions that God's name is being insulted because of Israel's suffering. This shows us that God's reputation is intertwined with the well-being of his people.
Well, interesting.
So the redemption isn't just about them, it's about vindicating God's honor before the nations.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I see that connection between God's glory and the redemption of his people popping up throughout the Bible. Okay, so we've got this backdrop of exile and God's promise of restoration. Then in verses 7 through 9, you highlighted that phrase, messenger with beautiful feet.
Yeah.
What caught your eye about this passage?
Oh, well, the imagery, it's just stunning, right? Someone bringing good news and proclaiming shalom. It felt so, so hopeful, powerful.
It really does. And I think it's right here that we start to see those messianic prophecies emerge more clearly. This messenger with beautiful feet being a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, bringing that good news of salvation, establishing God's kingdom.
Exactly. And that good news isn't just abstract, right? It has a real impact, a tangible impact on Jerusalem. The ruins of Jerusalem are called to break out into joy and sing together.
Wow, what a picture of restoration and renewal.
Right.
It's this incredible transformation,
yeah,
both individually and for the whole community.
Exactly.
And speaking of transformation, verse 10 expands this even further, stating that all the ends of the earth will see the salvation of our God.
Right.
This suggests that God's plan extends beyond Israel to encompass all of humanity.
You got it. Isaiah is proclaiming that God's salvation, it's universal, available to, everyone who believes, a message that goes beyond cultural and ethnic boundaries. But then in verses 11 and 12, there's this call to leave, get out of there, don't touch anything unclean. It feels, pretty urgent, almost like a warning. What were you thinking when you read these verses?
To be honest, it made me think of my own life. What unclean things do I need to leave behind to experience true spiritual renewal?
Oh, that's a great connection. This passage, it's all about repentance, about turning away from sin and embracing God's holiness. It reminds us that, while God's grace is free, it requires a response from us.
Yeah.
We have to actively choose to leave behind what's holding us back and walk in God's ways. But it's not about fear or anxiety, right? Verse 12 reminds us that Adonai will go ahead of you, and the God of Israel will also be behind you. Like, incredible security and assurance in those words.
It's like we're never truly alone on this journey.
No.
He's guiding us and protecting us every step of the way.
Yeah.
You know, that makes me think about the importance of community, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Something we emphasize a lot here at the Olive Grove Podcast.
Right.
We really believe in the power of connecting with others who share our faith.
Oh, so crucial, especially, when you're grappling with these like complex ideas, like the ones we find in Isaiah.
Yeah.
That's why we always encourage everyone listening to check out My Christian Space.
Yes. It's a fantastic platform where you can connect with like-minded believers, engage in meaningful discussions, and really like deepen your understanding of the Bible. And it's not just about online interaction either.
Right.
Through My Christian Space, we're also supporting the work of Enduring Freedom Ministries.
Yes. They're doing some truly amazing things, spreading the gospel and offering practical support to people in need, especially in the land of Israel.
Exactly. And one initiative that's really close to our hearts is their effort to establish a food pantry in Jerusalem. Imagine the impact we can have together, providing food and hope to those struggling.
Oh, for sure.
If you feel called to support this cause, you can donate through the My Christian Space website. Every contribution, no matter how small, truly makes a difference. Now, let's get back to Isaiah 52. Verses 13 through 15 introduce a figure who will be raised up, exalted, highly honored. Why this sudden shift in tone, and who are we talking about here?
This is where things get really interesting. These verses are like some of the most profound messianic prophecies in all of Isaiah. They describe the suffering and then the ultimate glory of the Messiah. And the language is, wow, it's incredibly powerful. Speaking of a figure who is, disfigured and no longer looked like a man.
Wow.
It's a stark contrast to like that triumphant imagery we saw earlier. What do you make of that? I know you had a lot of notes on this section.
Well, I know from my research that this passage has really shaped Christian understanding of Jesus' sacrifice and the meaning of the cross.
Yeah.
It points to the idea of substitutionary atonement, that the Messiah would suffer on behalf of others, taking on the punishment that we deserve.
Exactly. A concept so central to the Christian faith, and it's beautifully foreshadowed in this passage.
And despite this suffering, he will ultimately be, exalted, highly honored. It's a picture of victory emerging from suffering, a theme that, resonates throughout human history. But there's something else that caught my eye, too.
Oh, yeah.
Verse 14 says that kings will be speechless, and they will see what they had not been told. This speaks to the, unexpected nature of the Messiah's arrival and the profound impact it would have on the world.
That's a great observation. It's like a cosmic plot twist, a complete reversal of expectations. And yet it's a plot twist that brings, hope and redemption to all who believe.
It really is.
Welcome back to the Olive Grove Podcast. We're diving even deeper into Isaiah chapter 52, picking up where we left off, right? That image of the suffering servant, disfigured, no longer looking like a man, but destined for exaltation, honor. You had a lot of notes around those verses. What really stood out to you?
Yeah, the contrast, honestly, it was jarring. Isaiah is presenting this paradox, right? True glory coming through suffering. Humility is the path to exaltation. Makes you think of that quote you shared earlier, how, God's ways aren't our ways.
Yeah, that's such a key point. Makes me think about how these verses have impacted Christian theology too, shaping how we understand Jesus' sacrifice. The meaning of the cross. Yeah, it's a reminder that true leadership, it often involves self-sacrifice, putting others' needs before your own.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this chapter so relevant even thousands of years later.
Yeah.
As we're digging into Isaiah 52, we're not just exploring ancient prophecies. We're grappling with these timeless truths, right? Of human nature, suffering, redemption. It speaks to that deep longing within all of us for justice, peace, and restoration. But I did have a question about the structure of the chapter. You see how it alternates between pronouncements of judgment and pronouncements of hope. It's a constant back and forth. What's the purpose of that dynamic?
It's a brilliant literary technique. It highlights that contrast, right, between sin's consequences and the power of God's grace. Isaiah is painting this picture of both darkness and light, humanity's brokenness, but also the promise of healing.
It's like a roller coaster of emotions. You go from despair to hope, judgment to redemption. Makes you really feel the weight of those prophecies.
Exactly. And it reinforces that idea that God's judgment, it's never the final word. Even in pronouncements of, doom, there's always a glimmer of hope there, a promise of restoration. He's always working to redeem his creation, even when, things seem hopeless. Now, you underlined several passages dealing with the concept of holiness. It appears throughout the chapter, Zion clothing herself with strength. That contrast between the uncircumcised and unclean and the splendid garments of Jerusalem. Why this emphasis on holiness, you think?
I was wondering the same thing. It feels central to Isaiah's message, but I wasn't sure how to unpack it.
Well, in the biblical sense, holiness means being set apart, right? For God's purposes, living in a way that reflects his character, his will. It's not just about outward rituals or appearances, but about inward transformation, purity of heart, purity of mind.
So it's not about following rules.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a relationship with God that permeates every aspect of our lives.
Exactly. Isaiah is emphasizing that true redemption, it involves a transformation of our hearts, turning away from sin and embracing God's holiness.
Yeah. And this call to holiness is not just for, individuals, right?
No.
It's for the whole community of God's people.
Absolutely. When Isaiah talks about Zion, clothing herself with strength, it suggests this collective effort, a shared responsibility to live lives that, honor God, reflect his glory. We're not on this journey alone, right? We're part of this larger community of faith, supporting each other along the way.
Which again makes me think about the importance of finding those supportive communities, like places like My Christian Space, right?
Yes.
Where you can connect with others who are also grappling with these same ideas, seeking to live out their faith in meaningful ways.
It's such a valuable resource. And as we mentioned before, supporting organizations like Enduring Freedom Ministries, who are working to spread that same message of hope and provide, practical support to those in need.
Right. Like their food pantry initiative in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Such a tangible way to make a difference. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, back to Isaiah 52. There's this line in verse 10 that really stood out to me. All the ends of the earth will see the salvation of our God.
Yeah.
It suggests God's plan for redemption. It extends beyond Israel to encompass all of humanity.
You're picking up on those key themes. Isaiah is proclaiming that God's salvation, it's universal, available to everyone who believes, a message that, transcends those cultural and ethnic boundaries.
So this call to holiness, this transformation, it's not just for a select few. It's for everyone, regardless of their background, their ethnicity.
Precisely. And that message is so relevant today. We live in a world divided, by race, by religion, by culture. But the gospel, it transcends those divisions. It offers this path to reconciliation, to unity.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that we're all created in God's image, and we're all in need of his grace and redemption. Now, before we move on to the final section of Isaiah 52, what stands out to you as particularly meaningful or challenging?
What strikes me most is that interplay between judgment and hope. It reminds us that God takes sin seriously, but he also offers a way out. His judgment is always tempered with mercy. His desire is always for restoration. It's like that saying, God is too good to be unkind, and he's too wise to make a mistake.
I love that. It really captures the essence of God's character, that perfect balance of justice and love. What about you? What has resonated with you as we've, explored Isaiah 52?
I'm struck by the emphasis on transformation, both personally and communally. It's a reminder that redemption isn't just about escaping punishment. It's about becoming more like Christ, reflecting his character and love in the world.
And that transformation, it doesn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process, a journey of faith and obedience.
Exactly. And Isaiah 52, it gives us a glimpse of what that journey looks like. The challenges, the triumphs, the despair, and the hope. It's a story that continues to unfold in our own lives as we seek to follow Christ and live in the fullness of his redemption.
We've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive. Welcome back to the Olive Grove podcast for the final part of our deep dive into Isaiah 52. We've explored so much already, but you flagged those last few verses, Midas 13 through 15 Favics, particularly significant. What made those stand out to you?
Well, there's a real shift in tone, right? It's like the climax of the chapter. Isaiah paints this incredibly vivid picture of the suffering servant. He's raised up, exalted, highly honored, but first he endures unimaginable suffering.
Yeah, it's that juxtaposition that really struck me too. The idea that true greatness often comes from adversity.
Yeah.
You underlined the phrase, so disfigured that he didn't even seem human.
Yeah.
What were you thinking as you read those words?
It's such a powerful image. Disturbing even, right?
Yeah.
But it points to something so profound, this suffering servant. Once despised and rejected, he becomes the source of salvation, of hope for all humanity.
It completely, upends our worldly expectations of power, doesn't it? It's a radical reversal. The one who seems weakest becomes the strongest. The one who appears defeated achieves ultimate victory.
Exactly. It challenges us to rethink our own values, our priorities. Remember how verse 14 says that many were appalled at him, but ultimately kings will be speechless because of him. What was once seen as shame becomes a source of awe, of wonder. It all comes down to perspective,
It reminds me that God's ways are not our ways, and his thoughts, not our thoughts. What we might perceive as failure, God can use for his glory, for our ultimate good. I also notice how Isaiah really emphasizes the unexpected nature of the servant's exaltation. You even put a star next to verse 15, where it says people will see what they had not been told and ponder things they had never heard. What did you make of that?
I think Isaiah is preparing us for a surprise. The world's assumptions about power, about glory, they're about to be shattered. It's like he's saying, fasten your seatbelts. Things are about to get really interesting.
And that challenge to re-examine our values, it's just as relevant today, wouldn't you say? Are we chasing after these worldly notions of success, or are we embracing that path of humility, of service that leads to true greatness?
That's the question Isaiah 52 leaves us wrestling with. This chapter isn't just about, ancient prophecies. It's about those timeless truths that resonate so deep within us. The search for meaning, the desire for justice, the longing for redemption.
And it offers such a compelling answer to those longings, right? This suffering servant who embraces humiliation, even death, only to be raised up in glory, offering salvation to everyone who believes.
It's a story that continues to inspire, to challenge people from all walks of life, speaking to the transformative power of faith and the boundless love of God.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Isaiah chapter 52. We've covered a lot of ground, from that call for Zion to awake to the stunning portrait of the suffering servant. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of this incredible chapter and how it speaks to us today. Don't forget to subscribe to the Olive Grove Podcast on YouTube and visit the My Christian Space website for early access to new episodes and information about supporting the Enduring Freedom Ministries food pantry in Jerusalem. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, may you continue to seek truth, embrace grace, and walk in the light of God's love.